Yep, those are the images that we've been dealing with for the last week, 10 days. That is the situation on ground in Afghanistan. It is a humanitarian crisis. The world is watching, but I don't know whether the world can actually do anything. In the meantime, Afghans are left to their own devices. There's so many questions, and some of those are being answered by opinions, by perspectives. We don't actually know what could be happening on the ground. So, to clarify all of that for us so that we know what is happening and whether there is something that we can do to help, we have Indrani Bagchi, our special guest today. Indrani is the diplomatic editor at the Times of India. She's been following the Afghan story for the last 20 years, and we want to know from Indrani exactly what is happening on the ground. Facts and figures, not opinions.
Thank you very much for joining us today and offering to share your expertise and knowledge with not just us, but all our viewers. Thank you very much. We're very, very grateful that you made time.
Thank you.
Now you actually have been tracking and reporting on the Taliban for over 20 years, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you are clearly in a position to answer the most basic question. Who are the Taliban? Are they terrorists? Are they freedom fighters? Who are the Taliban?
They are both. In the sense that they are a group that was created after the Soviet Union left Afghanistan in the 1990s. They were created because the system that the Soviets left behind made it very difficult for any known kind of governance. Actually, it was a creation of the ISI of Pakistan, the intelligence agencies of Pakistan. They brought a set of youngsters together from the madrasas these are all Afghans, but remember, during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which by the way happened between 1979 and 1992 is when they actually left. In this time, the resistance to the Soviet Union was driven by Pakistan and the US and the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. All of them, they created what was called the Mujahideen, who fought the Soviet Union and drove them away from Afghanistan in the 1990s. By 1994, 1995, however, the systems in Afghanistan it was chaos. There was really no governance, etc. And the Taliban came into being at that time as a group of supposedly nationalists, but very severe Islamic fundamentalists as well, who imposed or sought to impose a very tough version of the Sharia on Afghanistan. Anyway, things came to a pass where the Taliban took over Kabul, much in the way that they have taken over Kabul right now in 1996. And they killed the then president, Najibullah, strung him up from a pole in the middle of Kabul. And that was the end of that short period between the Soviet Union leaving and the Taliban taking over. So that was 1996. So that's where the Taliban came from.
So, Indrani, I want to ask you there, at one point you used the term Mujahideen. So, certain Middle Eastern countries, the US, they supported the Mujahideen.
That's right.
But is it fair to say that they also supported what is now the Taliban? Because the US seems to be getting flack from both sides, right?
Yes.
You created it and then you went to war with it. So did they actually?
They did have a hand in it, in the sense that the people who were part of the Mujahideen were also part of the Taliban. So to an extent, yes. The cast of characters, shall we say, many in the cast of characters were very familiar to the US, including Osama bin Laden of the Al-Qaeda, which went and decided to
bring down the Twin
themselves
Towers
in Afghanistan. No. That they came later, but they parked themselves in Afghanistan as guests of the Taliban. The Taliban became the host for Al Qaeda.
And then what Al Qaeda did 9/11,
yeah,
because they were hosted by the Taliban in Afghanistan, which is why the US attacked Afghanistan and where the current problem started from. Just for perspective.
So Indrani, the question everybody's asking is, okay, we remember the Taliban rule for 5 years in Afghanistan from 96 to 2001. Everyone remembers they were hardliners, very, very extreme rules. There were beheadings and limbs being cut off and atrocities on women, not allowed to study, all that. And now they're like, oh, but this is now a watered down version of the Taliban. But we've been looking at, their press conferences, all their PR, etc., for the last 10 days. They are not seeming very different. Are they?
They're not.
They're not, right? I mean, are they now 2021 woke Taliban fighters? Or they're the same?
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it. I don't think they will ever be woke. But my personal senses and, this Taliban 2021 or Taliban 2.0, if you must call them, they are certainly much more savvy, certainly much more politically canny. So their press conferences have been saying the right kind of things, that, oh yeah, we will take care of our women. The women will have freedom to function under Sharia. We will not go after our enemies. We will not, there will be no revenge. Now, revenge, just to back up a little, we are also seeing reports of Taliban going door to door, making lists of people who have worked for foreign countries, for foreign companies, for foreign entities. So we don't know when, if they will be targeted, if they will be killed like they were earlier, or if they will be spared and included.
I have a question. Who is the enemy of the Taliban? According to the Taliban, who is their enemy?
Well, they so far for 20 years, their enemy was the US and the West, because they saw them as occupying forces. I mean, they occupied Afghanistan for 20 years. In a sense, countries like us, we are also enemy. Because why? Good. It's a question that is...
no, absolutely.
Because we are not Islamic. We have to remember that the Taliban are actually like an 80% owned subsidiary of Pakistan. And that brings the India-Pakistan dimension into Taliban's approach to India. So there is history against us. There was also history against the Russians, but remember, the Russians are the successor state of the Soviet Union. And but in the last 20 years, the Russians have made nice with the Taliban. So the Taliban actually now consider the Russians to be actually an
ally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, this is what the Taliban is doing now. We've seen it move at such a fast pace over the last week or two. But this resurrection, as it were, that has happened, there's enough people, and this is an opinion, right? It's not necessarily fact, put the blame on the Joe Biden government simply because he withdrew, the Taliban took over. But is it fair to say that? Is it really the Biden government's fault? Does it go back to Trump? Does it go back to George Bush? Is the Afghan government at some level to blame? Where are we putting?
So there is.
Where is this resurrection coming from? Who could have prevented it?
I think there is a lot of blame to go around. Now, how did the Taliban get to the place where it is today? Frankly, it has been growing. The Taliban resurgence, as we call it, or rather the sort of the rebirth of the Taliban, in a sense, came from 2006. And what were the Americans doing then? They were fighting in Iraq.
Yes.
They took their eyes off the ball in Afghanistan. They were fighting in Iraq. So the Taliban got space. Second, when Obama came in 2009, he ordered a review of the Afghan policy. By 2010, Obama was saying that we will draw down by December 2014. So the Taliban said, okay, fine. We are there.
Yep.
They started growing. People started funding them. They were taking opium revenues. Others were funding them. There are many ways of getting money, and so that's one. Osama bin Laden, if you remember, was killed on the 2nd of May, 2011, by the Obama administration. People expected at that time that they would leave. They could have left and said, we've done our bit. That's it. We're going. It may have been easier to handle the Taliban because they were not as strong as they are today. So over the years, the Taliban became a focal point for resistance to the US. And it was not just them. The Iranians were funding them. The Russians were funding them. In a sense, the Chinese were also doing a little bit of their own work. The Pakistanis were definitely funding them.
Yeah.
Because everybody was focused on getting the Americans out. So the Taliban was the best way to do it.
Wow.
Then Trump comes in and Trump says, oh, you know what? It's a wasted war. So the support for the war in America kept going down and down and down. And so there has been a successive drawing down of US presence, US troops in Afghanistan. Success. Yeah. But they've been paying, and somehow a lot of Band-Aid has kept the system going. Trump said, fine, we'll do a peace deal. The peace deal essentially was a deal to get the American troops out, because the Taliban was not expected to commit to anything. They were not even expected to commit to a ceasefire. So they were, and then when Biden came in, Biden was like, let's get out. So he put a hard stop to it.
Versus everybody doing it very slowly.
Yeah, but the next question is, A, why did Biden do it? But B, why did he do it in this way? So Biden and even Trump and Obama, they as American presidents, this part of the world, Central Asia, Middle East, this area, this part of the world has become less and less and less important to America. So on the other hand, East Asia has become more and more and more important to America. It is China. Focused on China. So as America itself evolved in the last 20 years, America is saying, why am I putting money, blood, people, etc. in Afghanistan when I really need to concentrate on the rise of China? And I don't even take oil so much anymore. Oil is no longer that important because America is producing more oil than even Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So their interest kept going down. And at one point, and Biden, even as a vice president, Biden was the one person in the Obama administration who used to say, let's get out of there, just put drones, put counter-terror, put airstrikes to attack terrorists, but just get out. So one of the first things he did when he came into power was, let's get out of this place.
Okay.
So what was the problem?
Indrani, let me ask you this, just continuing from your point about Biden getting out. And yes, the debate is, should he have gotten out so quickly? His perspective was, I need to put a hard stop to this. I can't do it across my administration. But successive US governments spent 20 years building up and training the Afghan army, supplying them with billions, hundreds of billions in arms, ammunition, armaments. Where did that army go in the last 2 weeks? It just fell
So,
city after city after city. Where were they?
so yeah, now that's actually a question which everybody is wrestling with, and it has no easy answers. But I'll tell you this: the supposedly 300,000 strong force that the Americans built. Frankly, how many of them were actually fighting? Not too many. Second, there was more than enough corruption in that Afghan government.
Wow.
And let me tell you, let nobody say that the Americans are squeaky clean. There is a lot of corruption in that system as well. There were defense contractors, there were other contractors, a lot of them made a lot of money and inflated invoices, inflated numbers, you name it. So there's enough corruption to go around. That's one. So the training was some, and yes, but the other thing that we don't actually look at is that in the last few months, certainly since 2020, or maybe a little before that, the Taliban have been making money deals with all the commanders, with the governors of the various provinces. And Afghans are old deal makers.
Yes.
Remember, the Taliban are also Afghan. They are also tribal. They also come from the same tribal networks that everybody else comes from. They are not outsiders. And the same stock that went into the army, the same stock also became the Taliban.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes.
In a family, it may well be that two brothers are in the army and two brothers are in the Taliban. That's what happens in Pakistan all the time. That one person is in the army, the other person is joined the Lashkar-e-Taiba. That happens.
And then obviously when it comes to, conflict, they're going to choose to not fight.
And you can choose to not fight. And where people did choose to fight, for instance, in Herat, in Western Afghanistan, where Ismail Khan, who's a well-known warlord, he stood up and said, I will fight the Taliban. He had such poor intelligence, he didn't know that the Taliban had bought everybody around him. The Taliban basically showed up at his house one morning and said, we've taken over, now you go.
Yeah.
So he had no option. He went. So now, the same thing happened in district after district, in province after province. So in many places, in many places, nobody fired a shot. They just went.
Yes, exactly.
So somebody must have paid somebody else. It must have been worth their while.
Yeah.
And the Afghan president, Ashraf Ghani, him running away, is it a betrayal of his country, or is it a smart move when he says he's coming back? He is in the UAE and he said, I am coming back. He's not coming back.
Nobody will give him the time of day. This is a man who came in, who jumped in from being a World Bank economist from Europe, came in. In fact, I was actually, we were in Bagram that day, and we were traveling to Kabul, and in a Northern Alliance helicopter. And Ashraf Ghani had just landed in Bagram, and he took a ride in our helicopter from Bagram to Kabul. That was in December 22, 2001. And so Ashraf Ghani, like Hamid Karzai before him, ran an extremely corrupt system. Extremely corrupt government. He was extremely unpopular. There was nothing that he did that was right, but he was supported by the West. He rigged 2 elections. Like Hamid Karzai also rigged elections, but remember Hamid Karzai used to be actually negotiator with the Taliban years ago. Ghani Ghani didn't connect with the people at all.
Yeah.
So Ghani's loss is not but as a president, you leave your country. It's a betrayal of the highest order.
It is.
So
I have to ask, our timeline has been flooded by some horrific images. We're seeing the babies being handed over to the soldiers. We're seeing very distraught people. And as lay people, we're all feeling terrible, especially for the women and children. And it makes us wonder, Can nobody help them? Their own government has run away. Their fighters are choosing not to fight for whatever reason. America, that spent 20 years there, seems to have abandoned them. Can nobody help? I mean, the United Nations, the Human Rights Commission, are we just going to leave Afghanistan to its own devices, or can we do anything?
It's a good thought. I'm not so sure that that's how the women will be saved in Afghanistan. If the Taliban decide that they want to impose extreme Sharia law in Afghanistan, it will frankly be a civil society led
resistance,
resistance. And if civil society or if other governments, say the Western governments, tell the Taliban that we will recognize you on condition that you do not do to women what you did to them the last time round. If they do that, there might be some levels of mitigation. If women who have, frankly, in 20 years, Afghan women have really shone in different parts, in different areas of society and in their work. If they can mobilize, if civil society across the world can mobilize to help to sort of stand up for these women, they have a chance. Honestly, governments are actually, they keep putting, because governments will put national interests first.
Yeah.
Often things like women get left out. And I think it's time for us women to, around the world, to say that this cannot happen to women in Afghanistan anymore. And use so there is very strong civil society across the world.
Yes.
Let the girls fight.
But I mean, it is so dangerous for them to fight in Afghanistan. I'm sure you saw the interview of their football captain of the national football team, and she said, it's been great pride and honor for me to represent my country, and we've achieved so much, and now I am telling my girls to get rid of their social media presence and burn their kits because the fighters are coming to attack them. It's yes, they need to protest, but so many of them are going to lose their lives.
They will lose their lives. They will lose a lot more. Also, I mean, if you look at reports around Afghanistan that say that they are making lists, they've sort of told fathers that please send daughters and unmarried or widowed women between 15 and 45 to be married off as sex slaves to the Taliban fighters. I mean, we've seen this with ISIS. We've seen this with Daesh in Syria and Iraq. So it's not new. And now, the point is, can the Taliban mitigate their own instincts if they want to run a legitimate government in 2021, 2022? Can they do that? We don't know. We really, I mean, this is something is in the area of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Indrani, thank you very much for taking time out to talk us through the history, the present, and as you said, with civil society will have to gather and try.
Civil society will have to do.
We'll have to rise.
And if you tell us, are there any organizations that you think we could, as our viewers, as individuals, contribute to, send money? I know Americans are raising money to evacuate the Afghans, especially the ones that have been helping, the Americans on ground. Can we in India put our money somewhere as an individual, try and help the ladies? Do you know of any? If you could tell us, and we'll put it in the description.
I don't, but I can ask around, and I think it's too early. Things like this take a little while to develop. Once you have to see what it is that you want to fight for, and who are your people on the ground, who are you going to help on the ground, and what is it that you're going to help for. So I don't think anything's there at this point, because at this point, you really, if you're putting money together, people are just getting out of Afghanistan. Frankly, that will also stop at some point, because the other countries will stop and say that I'm not going to take any more Afghans. And that's going to happen very, very soon.
Yeah.
So which means that they will have to stay back. And if they have to stay back, and then that's the question that will have to be asked is, what kind of a life do they have if they stay back? We don't.
And will it help them for us to keep the hashtags alive and to keep talking about them?
It would indeed.
Because the big fear is out of sight, out of mind, right? So
Indeed, absolutely. We should, the hashtags should be there. The social media pressure should be there. And for every women's organization, for every civil society organization in the world should stand up and be counted, at least in terms of their voice at this point. Yes.
Yeah, Indrani, we're going to do our bit, however little that is. But thank you so much for that perspective.
Thank you.
We now have clarity versus just reading, notifications, opinions, and we appreciate you doing that for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Indrani. Indrani Bagchi, the diplomatic editor for the Times of India, breaking down what exactly is happening in Afghanistan for us. We hope you enjoyed this particular episode, this particular special of So Far So Good. It is very, very different from what we usually do, but we thought it was a very important subject for all of us to understand better. Do let us know in the comments if this worked for you. Remember to like the video. If you did, please subscribe, turn that bell icon on, and remember to share with like-minded people. Thank you for watching. We'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
Thank you.